Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson. Senator Sheldon, back to you.
Thanks very much. Given the findings in the previous two reports and now where the state of the culture of Airservices Australia is at, and this is sort of like the most direct way I can say it, would you feel comfortable having your children working at Airservices Australia now?
At this stage, yes, because of the pathway that we are on to improve. Senator.
Well, I just want to talk to you a bit about the Code of Conduct and how many Code of Conduct investigations are underway?
At this stage, and so from the 1st of June to the 30th of September, and I'll ask Ms Gemmell to go into more detail, we've had 50 Code of Conduct investigations, 13 are currently in their assessment mode, 12 are currently under investigation and 25 have been completed.
And how many of the ones that have been completed have adverse findings have emerged?
I'll ask Ms Gemmell to provide that information.
Thank you, Mr Harfield and Senator. There are 9 people have left the organisation since the 1st of June.
What was the gold watch or kicked out?
9 people have left the organisation since the 1st of June on the basis of bullying and harassment related investigations.
Thank you.
So 9 people have left. The question was, though, how many have had adverse findings? Is it only 9 or is there more than 9?
There are, I'd have to take on notice the other findings, Senator, but 9 people have left as a result of those investigations.
We'll take on notice to find out what the total of adverse findings are, Senator.
So there are some people who have adverse findings are still working there? I understand there's a level.
Because it would be the range of, there could be a warning, final warning, etc.
Absolutely.
How many redundancies have been, and if you can come back with that answer
Yes.
about how many adverse findings,
Yes.
that would be helpful, thank you. How many redundancies have been offered since the finalisation of the Broderick review?
So we've had, as reported to Senator Sterle, there's been 30 voluntary redundancies being applied into our contract managers. It is not a result of the Broderick review. It has obviously occurred since the Broderick review.
Just how's the distribution of redundancies been determined?
It is our contract management cohort. So it's been done by an expressions of interest from our contract managers, and then those contract managers have been risk assessed to what their role is, and their departure date has been dependent on making sure that their responsibilities have been handed over if they're in an area where, for example, there have been a fire station manager that's put their hand up and they can't leave the organisation until there's another fire station manager in place.
And so was that was that a general redundancy offer, or was it a redundancy offers in particular classes of work?
It was a general redundancy offer for those that are on our managers that are under contract, individual contracts.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, I misunderstood that before. Are service managers or any employees in leadership roles currently subject to Code of Conduct investigations?
Yes, there are.
Are you able to give us what the number is?
I can give you, out of the 13 that are being investigated in regards to bullying and harassment, 3 are senior managers, 5 are managers and 4 are employees. With regards to a couple of cases in regards to sexual harassment, 1 is a senior leader and 3 are employees. Overall, from a senior manager point of view, there are 12 that have been under investigation. Just going back to the 9 that have left the organisation, 4 of those were managers and 5 were employees.
Are these managers or employees that are in leadership roles eligible for redundancies under the current Airservices program?
Senator, are you saying that those that are under investigation able to then go and take redundancy?
Are they eligible for redundancies under the current Airservices program of redundancies?
I'm not trying to be smart and sit there and go, if they're a contract manager, they're eligible to put an expression of interest in. Whether we would accept that because they're under investigation is a different matter. If you understand.
Does the code of conduct process be concluded prior to offering any redundancies to managers or employees in leadership roles?
So if they're under a code of conduct investigation and going through, they will not be provided a redundancy until that is completed, and if, depending on what the sanction is, if they're exonerated and they apply for a redundancy, then they could probably be eligible for it. But they won't be allowed to go on redundancy before that is completed.
Oh, right, that's the question, right. Has any manager or person in a leadership role who has had an allegation or allegations made against them, whether or not they have or are being investigated for a breach to the Airservices Code of Conduct, ever been offered a redundancy?
I have to take that on notice, Senator. I couldn't recall.
Is it the case that employees of Airservices Australia are required to sign any form of non-disclosure agreements when they commence their employment?
I'd have to take it on notice whether when they commence their employment, Senator. I don't know.
And could you also just take a notice whether it's the same as or similar to what public servants are required to sign such a document?
So there would be the normal secrecy and confidentiality type things, but not necessarily non-disclosure agreement. So it would be the same employment conditions as the public service.
So thanks, you gave me the answer to the second question. If you can take on notice the first question. What about when an employee of Airservices leaves the organisation?
Depending on the employee and the circumstances, what would can occur is what we would call a deed of release is signed. Usually it can be someone who's taking redundancy, can be leaving for a variety of different reasons, and even leaving the organisation as a result of disciplinary action.
So could that also include in the circumstances where there may be a financial settlement that they would sign and be required? I use the word required, potentially required to also sign a non-disclosure agreement.
So if there's, for example, a matter that may be settled and there is a financial compensation, for example, that is standard practice for a deed of release to be signed.
And that includes where a settlement involving a complaint against another work colleague or manager may have been involved?
Potentially.
So why does Airservices management require the signing of these non-disclosure agreements?
In some cases, the agreement can be because of confidential information that they hold, and when they're departing the organisation, because we can't have sort of, I call it, non-compete clauses, so it could be for that particular reason. If then in regards to, I'll call it a code of conduct issue, usually that if the organisation, if they're departing the organisation, sometimes they're signed is because the matter has been dealt with and they don't carry it on in going forward. In other words, it has been dealt with and the sanction's been applied and they've been terminated, and then everyone moves on.
Is there a standard format you're able to provide to the committee on non-disclosure agreements?
Yeah, we can provide you our standard non-disclosure agreement. Just something to add, Senator, and maybe just because of the inference or something that you mentioned in the previous question, is that we would apply this to all. This is not sort of just for managers or whatever. It's any employee. It's not distributed just for managers. It's anyone.
Since 2005, how many NDAs have been signed between Airservices and a staff member or ex-staff member?
I have to take that on notice, Senator.
Thank you. Can you recall any recent ones in the last 12 months?
I've been involved in requiring for two managers that have just taken voluntary redundancy. They're the only two that I'm aware of, but we'll bring them up.
So the other is, hopefully I got these figures right, but
Sorry,
there
there
was
is one
30
other that I am
people-
aware of, Senator, which was a result of a settlement of a sexual harassment case
all right, these
recently.
these are non-disclosures as a result of sexual harassment
Correct.
case. All right. And I gather from that the other 30 people, if I've got that figure right, of redundancies, they would have all been required or requested to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Some of them, my understanding, would not have to sign a non-disclosure or a deed of release for their departure. In this case here, it is being done because of some commercial and confidence issues that we have.
Or as you mentioned, there's 2 cases that were settled.
Yeah, with that case that was settled, yes. But that wasn't part of the voluntary redundancy program. So.
Since, can you also give me the number of, I may have asked this in another way, but just so I'm clear, could you also give me a list of how many were settled with non-disclosure agreements that involved financial or other types of settlements arising from from harassment or bullying complaints?
We can provide that.
Since the release of the Broderick report, how many NDAs have been proposed to or have been signed by current or recently terminated staff members?
Can I take that on notice, Senator? I don't have that with me.
No, I've still got